Hello, everybody. I think we'll make a start as we're sort of just past the top of the hour, and people are beginning to join us, and will probably continue to join us. Welcome, everybody. Mel, do you want to turn your camera on so we can see you, which would be lovely? Um, we've been asked to do this series of webinars by the council on digital wellbeing and cultures around new digital trends. The lockdown caused by COVID-19 has meant that many companies have been looking at increasing their online digital model and so working from home. So we're putting together a 4-week program of weekly webinars, and of which this is the first. And we're really pleased to have Mel Bruno with us. Now, just to sort of put a bit of background to this, when this all started back in March, April last year, I thought I would be working from home until about July. I tend to work in sort of 3-month chunks. So it was the laptop at the end of the kitchen table for me. I had a kitchen chair, and then I basically then got a cushion, then I got a better backrest. I had no room for my papers. I had to clear the kitchen table every day. My son would then clear the papers away, and I would never then be able to find them. So then, here we are a year later, and I'm now far better kitted out. I've got space on my landing, 2 screens, a separate keyboard, a decent work chair, which I blagged from Venture X, thank you very much. But it took me time to admit that I needed all this, because this is also my home, as you know, it's not just my office. So I'm now fine with working from home, and I'm certainly more productive, but I'm lucky I've got space. Now to move to the bigger picture, the accountancy firm BDO tells staff to work where they want after the pandemic. Many of the larger companies are adopting similar policies, with hybrid working becoming the norm. Maybe a couple of days in the office and the rest working from home. So these days are with us to stay for a bit longer, I'm thinking. We're really pleased to have Mel Bruno with us today, our Health and Safety Director of Hounslow Chamber. Mel is an expert provider in all areas of the transport and warehousing industry, and as a qualified health and safety advisor, professional trainer, and dangerous goods safety advisor. Mel works closely with airlines, handling agents, freight forwarders, distributors, and manufacturers to ensure clients meet all the requirements of the relevant legislation. Mel is also a qualified instructor for the CAA and a member of the ICHCA. Also, one good thing about COVID-19 is that I've actually got to know Mel a great deal better. I now class her as a friend as well as a work colleague. So there are positives through this awful time we've been living through. Please put your questions in the Q&A box. The webinar will be recorded and will be on our YouTube channel as soon as Lisa can get it up there, which is usually within about 5 minutes. So thank you very much, and the floor is yours, Mel. Over to you.
Hi, Sally. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And yes, it's the positives definitely are that we've found a friendship in all of this. Even though I'm sure when I first emailed you that display screen equipment assessment, you were overly happy with me.
I must admit, when I received that, I did actually call Lisa, and I sort of freaked. It was quite interesting because I was saying to Lisa, this is my home. It's not, and I was based in the kitchen. I hadn't worked out that I could actually move up to the landing. As I say,
Yeah.
the penny dropped in last July when we realised we're in this for the long term.
Yeah.
But I didn't really want a work chair at the end of my kitchen table. So
No.
it's fascinating. Anyway, over to you.
Okay, so on that note, hopefully today I can actually maybe clear a few of the lines, answer a few questions, put some clarity into where we're at the moment. But who would have thought it 14 months ago that we would still be here having these conversations? So what I'm going to do is hopefully, because the other thing we've all learned is how to do Zoom and Teams and share screens. And the best saying has to be, you're still on mute. But hey, we're going to give this a go and hope this works. So we have practiced this. So we're going to go for it now. Okay, so here we go. Look at that. Technology's working. Thanks for the thumbs up, Sally. So there's a lot of information out there, as we know, and lots of different places you can read up on what we should be doing, what we could be doing. And as things move, it's still very fluid, isn't it? So hopefully this will help. So first of all, I'm going to start with just considering the working from home. I know this is something lots of people have been doing for quite a while now. So it's really just to reiterate where we're at, and just hopefully refocus and concentrate on making sure everybody's safe. I had somebody say to me the other day, I think there's going to be a lot of physiotherapists out there getting a lot of work from back injuries and things from people not working from home safely. Employers have a responsibility. They need to recognise the duty of care to all their employees, irrespective of where they are working, ensuring that working from home is as regulated as it is in the office. And that includes focusing on those living in rented accommodations with potentially insufficient internal space and no outdoor space. Those working from laptops on inappropriate surfaces. Don't think you went quite as far as an ironing board, Sally, but yeah, ironing boards, beds, sofas, and there's loads of other safety issues that come from putting laptops on beds, on sofas, and things like that. And all of these should be addressed. Okay, so what are your employer responsibilities then? They are the same responsibilities for home workers as any other worker. Whether you are working from home permanently or temporarily, you should consider how you'll keep in touch with them, the work activities that they will be doing, and how long they will be carrying out those activities. Can it be done safely? Are there any additional control measures that need to be put in place to protect them? And there's just a little image for Sally's benefit of a display screen equipment workstation checklist. They are all available, but obviously we're always here to help you. If you need any guidance on any of this, as Sally said, and hopefully you all now know, we're just on the end of an email. Please let us know. Other things to consider include, these are not limited to though, it is everybody's responsibility. You as an employee or as an employer, you need to be checking all of these things out. Okay, so take into consider, sorry, Fly decides to join our webinar. Correct seating, as Sally said, she's now managed to blag herself a lovely chair. Making sure that you are sitting correctly is so important for your back. That you've got adequate work surface, the twisting, the turning, all of those kind of issues. They sadly fall under the manual handling operations. People say, I say it all the time, do you have manual handling considerations? No, we all just sit at desks. It's a manual handling. You bend down, you pick up a pen. It's manual handling. It sounds absolutely ridiculous, but those repetitiveness of picking files out of a drawer, picking a box up off the floor. If you haven't got enough workspace on your desk, guarantee some of you have got piles of papers on the floor next to you, or files or folders. Stop smiling, Sally. Okay, you bend down to pick those up. You are twisting, you are stooping, you are bending. They are all manual handling operations. They all have an impact on your back, and it will be something very, very silly one day that will trigger it off. How many friends have you had that have said, I was just bending down to pick up one of the kids' toys and my back went? It's not the bending down to pick up the kids' toys that made your back go. It's months and years of not working with your back safely. Okay, as you can tell, it's something I do go on about with all of my staff, actually, the way they sit at their desks. Keyboard technique. Is there anything that you need to do? Do you need a wrist support? It's quite a common one. We see it all the time. Keyboards, different angles. There are so many different styles of keyboards out there now to support different learners. I was unfortunate to get a wrist injury many years ago when I worked in an office permanently. And it was because I had a right-handed mouse and I was left-handed. It was long before the days of workstation assessments. But it is so important because it does have an impact. Repetitive strain injuries, one of the biggest causes of neck and back pain, which comes onto posture, how you're sitting. How many times as children did your grandparents go, stand up straight? Okay, it gets to the point where actually to stand up straight, people say that's really uncomfortable. is because we've just not been doing it properly for so long. The position of the screen, making sure that you are sitting straight in front of the screen, is also so important. If you haven't got the right space, then you're not sitting correctly. It's that simple, and this is what home working is causing. Support devices may well be things like a footstool. If you need to have your chair high enough so that your arms are at the right angle, that your feet are off the floor, then you're putting pressure on the back of your knees. So you may need a footstool. Non-reflective screens, so that you don't have an issue with your eyes. Correct light and heat, the environment in which you're working in has an impact on your health. Taking regular breaks. Now, I will be the first one here to put my hand up and say, I am absolutely guilty of not doing this, to the point now where I actually have a timer on my phone, and every hour, and my wrist now, because I've now set it up on my Fitbit, that every hour it vibrates. So at 10 to the hour, if I haven't done 250 steps, my wrist will vibrate and tell me to go for a walk. Okay, it may be just to make a cup of coffee, to just visit the bathroom. If you've got others working from home with you, that's actually quite a good time to just say, do you fancy a quick cuppa? We would do it in the workplace. Let's just make sure that we're carrying on that at home. Routine. There's a really big blurred line between work and home. We need to have the routine. It's the one thing that everybody that I speak to has said, the reason they want to go back to the office is they want the structure, they want the routine. It's not the easiest thing to do, work from home. And for years I've been doing it as I've worked for myself. But I got very structured in school run, wash load on, quick cup of tea, off to my desk. Thankfully, the washing takes an hour and 40 minutes. Sad, I know that I remember that. An hour and 40 minutes later, it gave me a chance to get up from my desk, hang the washing up, make a cup of tea, come back to my desk. All these little things that can really help with routine and structure when still working from home. Okay, I mentioned display screen equipment. It is so important we take the breaks, we avoid awkward static postures by regularly changing our position. This image here is a classic example where people don't have a desk, they're sat on the floor with their laptop on them, or they're sat on the sofa. On the floor, they've got more adequate workspace around them. They've got plenty of floor space that they might not have sitting in an armchair. But it still means we need to get up, we keep moving, we keep stretching. And this really is not an ideal position for working. I was talking to a friend of mine about this eye fatigue earlier, my change in focus and blinking from time to time. And the response I got was, wow, do you know how much I really struggle when I'm wearing my lenses and I'm working? I've realised that I don't blink because my lenses dry out. It's quite an interesting one. I don't wear lenses, so I'd never come across that one, but definitely something to think about. If you're wearing lenses and your eyes do get a little bit dry, it could be where you are focusing on the screen so heavily that you're not blinking enough and keeping the moisture in your eyes. Okay, sometimes we might need some specialised display screen equipment. Employers should try to meet those needs where possible. Okay, we're not saying as employees you can start writing your list of your wants, trying to put forward this gaming chair on the company budget. It's not going to work like that. It's got to be realistic and it's got to be reasonable. Some of that equipment might include a different type of keyboard. Like I say, there are ergonomic keyboards out there now. The mouse might be particularly shaped, or it might be generic. Just be careful when you're looking at your mouse and make sure that it does work for you. The risers, my laptop sits on a riser and I've got a proper keyboard. Laptops are great, they're very portable, but sometimes if they're very small screened and you're sitting in front of them for a long period of time, you should be thinking about getting a screen to plug them into with a proper keyboard and a proper mouse, because the laptops are very portable and great, but they're not great for long periods of time working. Other larger items, it might be ergonomic chairs. We'll all come to Sally when we need one of them. Height adjustable desks, the standing up, the sitting down. We've all seen them. They're quite easy to get hold of these days, and they're not overly expensive anymore. No plugs intended, but IKEA do a brilliant range of these, and they're quite easy. But again, it could potentially be space for your employees. As Sally quite rightly said, it is still her home. You don't want these great big desks and things in there, but you must be able to work safely. You need to encourage your workers to find other ways of creating that comfortable working environment. Okay, so if you're not going to go down that road, and we're down to the last couple of months, and you're going to stagger the work coming back in, that they're starting to say they've got a problem with their back or there is an issue, it's quite easy to get a box to go under their feet and a cushion to support their back. Right, we're not asking you to go out and buy all this singing and dancing equipment for them. Keep the arrangements under review. Okay, that's probably the key thing now for me. There's lots of businesses out there, maybe not got this in place straight away, but eventually did get this information in place with their employees. But we are now a year on. Make sure that that working environment is still adequate for your employees, and that for yourself as well. Maybe move your desk around a little bit if it's you that's working from home. You should have regular discussions with your workers or your managers to assess whether additional steps are needed, where they start reporting aches and pains or discomfort related to their temporary arrangements. Talk about how that might be able to be changed. Display screen equipment workplace risk assessments are meant to be reviewed annually anyway. Okay, so now's probably a good time to start looking at reviewing those documents. We've seen an awful lot about mental health, and I'll come on to that a bit later on, but there are adverse effects for working in isolation. All right, make sure that we are keeping up to date with all of our members of staff, whether it be a quick Teams call, a Zoom call, whatever it might be, a phone call if need be. And making sure that they're not working longer hours. There are many of my clients that are saying that they finally realised they get as much productivity out of their staff working from home as they did having them in the office, which 15, 20 years ago, a working from home day, to most of those that I worked with in the city, was where you booked your dentist appointment or your doctor's appointment, or caught up with friends for lunch. Working from home is not the same, as I was quite rightly corrected by Rob a couple of weeks ago, in that he worked harder when he worked from home. And I think lots of businesses are seeing that. People are working hard at home. In the middle of all of this, that's potentially because there was nothing else they could do. As things start to open up again, that may begin to change, that you can get out and about. The weather has meant you've not wanted to go out anywhere either, good old British weather. But now you can sit back indoors. So that does actually give you the opportunity. And there is nothing to say that in your lunch break, it isn't, it's able to meet up with a friend and have coffee and a sandwich in your lunch break. You're still working from home, you're entitled to that break. You should be taking those breaks. Okay. And where your employers have decided to make working from home arrangements permanent, they should explain how to carry out the full workstation assessments and provide all workers with the appropriate equipment and advice on the control measures that need to be in place. Okay, I think I've gone on enough about your desks. We'll leave the desks where they are for the time being. Again, if anybody's got any questions relating to display screen equipment, workstation assessments, then please drop Sally an email or myself an email and we can come back to you. An important one, lots of talk about lone workers. Okay, who are lone workers? They're anybody that works outside of normal office hours, that they are remote from a central office. I've highlighted the one that we're focusing on today, working from home. Those working in other people's homes, or those who travel as part of their job. These are all classified as lone workers. Okay, so what are the risks? Risks for lone workers: no direct supervision or anyone to help them if things go wrong. So that means that we have to put some kind of control measures in place to protect these lone workers. Okay, by keeping in touch with them, we can reduce those risks. With lone workers, including those working from home, ensure regular contact is made to keep them healthy and safe. There's lots of different ways we can do this. We must also bear in mind that at any one point, we can be alone at home and we have a responsibility for ourselves. This doesn't all come down on the employer. Let's be honest, I think we can all safely say at some point or another, whether it be cleaning our outside windows, climbing in the loft, or just trying to carry too much down the stairs and potentially tripped on the bottom stair. We've all taken risks at home. We should all be thinking then, what do I do if that happens? I work at home on my own quite regularly. What would happen if I fell down the stairs? Oh, don't get me wrong, within about 5 minutes, someone would know because my phone would ring and I wouldn't answer it. And someone would be like, something's wrong, Mel's not answering her phone. But it's so important to think about those things as well, okay? We have a responsibility for ourselves. We can't expect our employers to do all of it. It's a two-way street, okay? If contact is poor, workers may feel disconnected, isolated, or abandoned. And this can affect stress levels and mental health. Highlighted there because I'm going to come back to that and how we can help that slightly. But as I say, think about those risks. What would we do when we're at home on our own, carrying out a window cleaning task or putting the Christmas tree back up in the loft? What would we do if we fell then? Would we make sure we had our mobile phone on us maybe? So that if I was laying there, I could just make an emergency call. All of those kind of things. Think about that for yourselves and then discuss that with your employer. Or if you are the employer, have those conversations with your employees too. Okay, there are lone worker advice on the HSE's website. There are policies that can be written that you can actually focus on these, and you should be carrying out a lone worker risk assessment. And you should be then communicating that to all your staff. Or if you are a member of staff working as a lone worker, make sure you speak to your employer about what control measures they have documented for lone workers. Some of my guys work night shifts on their own in transport offices, and for them we have lone worker alarms. They attach to their belts, and if they go horizontal, and that's not to lay down and have a little nap when there's nothing going on, the alarm will go off and it will ring through to one of us to make sure we phone through to them. I have lone workers that work in chillers. In those chillers, there is no ability to hear them if they scream with the doors shut. So we have to have some kind of alarm in place for those as well. So there's lots of different ways that you can manage this, and there's lots of advice out there, but please, again, get in touch if you need anything. Okay. Stress and mental health. Home working can cause work-related stress and affect people's mental health. We know this, we're seeing this now, we're hearing it all the time. It is probably the biggest negative effect on people of COVID-19 is the mental health crisis that we're now likely to be in. Being away from managers and colleagues could make it difficult to get proper support. You'll also probably be aware that when you work in a department with other people, you pick up on other people's personality traits, the way they are. Some of your colleagues may not be morning people, but come lunchtime, you can't shut them up. Some of us are a bit like Duracell bunnies. From the minute we wake up to the minute we go to sleep, we don't stop. But our colleagues would recognise those signs, whereas when you're not with them, there is nobody recognising those signs. We need to try to make sure we keep in touch so that we can spot those signs and help where we can. So put procedures in place so you can keep in direct contact with your home workers, so you can recognise the signs of stress as early as possible. It's also important to have an emergency point of contact and to share this so people know how to get help if they need it. Okay, Again, lots of information out there, lots of talk on this, and lots of support is available. We see it on the television, there's lots of this, Get Britain Talking. Let's keep it up and help anybody that we think may be struggling with their mental health. We have mental health first aiders. They're always available for a chat if anybody needs it. Okay, so that's the doom and gloom. Let's get us back to some normality, shall we? What happens when we're now starting to think about returning to the office? As the restrictions are eased and people return to work, it's vital that your workplace is COVID secure and a COVID risk assessment has been completed. Okay, yes, it is a thing. There is a COVID-19 risk assessment needed. There are templates, again, available online, but again, we have the support for that if you need it. ACHCA have put advice on understanding the risks and guidance on how transmission can be reduced. These includes talking about changes in your workplace, such as site rules, one-way systems, and the procedures for arriving at work. So what do you as employers or your employers need to do? By law, employers have a duty of care for staff, customers, and anyone who visits their workplace. Employers must do all they reasonably can to protect the health, safety, and well-being of people at work. Complete a risk assessment and take reasonable steps to prevent harm, and consult staff on any decisions that involve the health and safety. Okay. We are aware that lots of our businesses within the Hounslow Borough have less than 5 employees, and therefore by law, they do not have to write down their risk assessments. They don't have to have a written health and safety policy, but they must still be able to prove that they have done everything reasonably practicable to protect their staff. And realistically, the best way to do that and be able to prove it, should the unforeseen ever happen, is to have it written down. So we'll know legally, less than 5 employees, you don't have to. You would still need to be able to prove that you have done, as the HSE's favourite saying is, done everything reasonably practicable to protect everybody. So how do we do that? By planning the return to the office. Where a workplace is currently closed or staff are on furlough or working from home, the employer should talk as early as possible about returning to the workplace. Some of the things to discuss and plan for with your staff could include when it might reopen and which staff are likely to return to work. How the employer will make sure the workplace is safe and how they will get views from staff about any further changes. Meetings, updates, point of contact, feedback forms. This all needs to be a two-way street. As some of you may have already started going out and about and may hopefully have been able to make it to the pub or out for dinner or at least coffee and cake, my favourite pastime. You may be feeling a little bit anxious yourself. It's a bit different. Has it just felt like there's nothing's ever changed and what we've just been through just seems a little bit surreal? Or are you still feeling a little bit anxious? If you're feeling that now, that's only going to be heightened when you're going into the office and there's people moving around. What can we do to make everybody feel safe and secure? If there might be a phased return, i.e. staff returning before others, or there may be staggered start times or alternate days. We know that lots of workplaces have reduced the number of desks, so therefore it means less people can be in at any one time. So they're rotating. Some might be in Monday, Wednesday, Friday, some might only be in Tuesdays, Thursdays. But again, remembering this, keep in touch. It's always good, whether it be via a team or a Zoom or a once a month meeting, that everybody gets the opportunity to see each other. Communicate who's likely to stay working from home. I know lots of the clients that I deal with, their customer service division is working quite well from home. They don't have any plans on bringing them back to the workplace. I know some of the big corporate companies are talking about September as the earliest return for any, and some of them not until January 2022. So this could still be going on for a lot longer, and others have been in all the time, especially if you've been dealing with logistics like I have. We haven't stopped. What's furlough? What's working from home? But we must look at this phased return. Staff should be ready to return to work at short notice, but employers should be flexible where possible. It's something I've seen lots of conversations about, and I've put one slide right at the end that if people want copies of it, I know it's going to be made available. It's a very tricky one to say our business is reopened and I need you back in work, versus I'm still very anxious and I'm not ready to come back in and I don't know if the office is safe. It's a fine line, and I'm sure that if there's any of our lawyers or solicitors within our borough that wants to have a chat about this, I've heard two completely different cases. One that has totally favoured the employee, and I've heard one that's totally favoured the employer. So I'm not quite sure where the line sits on that, but I'd be quite interested in that one myself, on where we sit with that. My feeling is, if as an employer you can prove that you have put all the safety measures in place and you have all your risk assessments and you've done everything reasonably practicable, there is no reason under the terms of their contract they shouldn't return to work. I'm sure I'll get corrected somewhere along the line by a very good solicitor, but that's what we need to think about. Okay. How staff might travel to the office. I've got different clients. One went all out and hired minibuses so that none of their staff had to use public transport in the beginning. They needed them all back in, and they hired minibuses to go and pick them all up. That's kind of excessive, but great. They're my gold star customer at the moment. But thinking about if they're getting on public transport, do we have a minibus, their company car? Are they car sharing? How are we managing the transmission of COVID when they're travelling to and from the office? Let's think about that one too. This consulting with the staff, you should have feedback. You should be open to feedback from your employees. No, we're not going to start getting them a Costa drive-through and things like that so they don't have to touch each other in a canteen. I'm sure on the feedback forms there will be some excessive ones in there, but I'm sure along the way there'll be some really good constructive ideas from employees, and we should be open to consider those suggestions and then reach an agreement. Communication is absolutely key at this time. Where they have them, employers should also consult their trade union or other employee representatives. They should check if there's any agreement with the representatives that say they must formally consult. We know there are some unions, especially within the airport community. Their unions work very hard for their employees, their customers as they are. But things that to talk about could include how health and safety is being reviewed and managed. Employers should share their latest risk assessments. It is the time now. They would need to have been reviewed anyway. Majority of your risk assessment will only be on a 12-month review. So if they haven't already, it's time that they were reviewed. Any changes that could make the workplace safer. For example, additional hand washing facilities, giving people different start and finish times to avoid overcrowding, floor markings to help people stay apart. For those that have continued working through this, all right, we can also sometimes get complacent. And those visuals remind us that we must still be socially distancing and things like that. And continue to monitor your working from home arrangements. Okay, changes that might affect someone's employment contract. If there are any proposed changes that affect the written terms of someone's contract, the employer must consult them or their representative. For example, their trade union representative, okay? So again, this is where it starts, that kind of grey area, that blurred line between we're safe and ready to open and I don't feel ready to come back. If actually you've changed their working times or you've changed their start time, their finish time, the department they're going to be working in, all of these may have an issue with their contract, and that's when it will then potentially cause you a problem. Again, I'm sure at some point we'll be able to work with some of our law firms and things in helping any employer that gets caught up in any of these situations along the way. So what are the safety measures? I'm sure we've all seen hands, face, space and fresh air and all of that kind of thing. So it's just to revisit that for a workplace point of view. We have got the washing hands, it's fair enough. The hand sanitizer stations, those businesses have done really well out of COVID, I'm sure, but each to their own. If you've diversified that way, well done. Because they are great. And again, they're another visual. It's not just about the hand sanitizing, it's about reminding people. You bump into a hand sanitizing station, you go, oh, when was the last time I did wash my hands? We'll have some of that. It's visuals. Face masks or face coverings, as we like to call them. We know that some of the rules on that are changing. Just try to keep yourself up to date. The guys in the office, Sally, Lisa, Alan, are doing a fantastic job in keeping us all as up to date as we possibly can as things change with the government. But it is your responsibility as employee and employer to make sure you're following the right current guidance. Social distancing. We still should be thinking about social distancing. I was in a communal workspace just last week, and there are banks of desks facing each other. So we've now had to mark out certain desks that people can't sit in for the time being, just to remind us to not be sitting face to face. Side by side is better than face to face. And where you have got banks of desks that are face to face, one goes one end and one goes the other. So they are facing each other, but they're not directly facing each other. Okay. If that can't be done, then we need to think about screens and barriers that need to be put up instead. Cleaning and disinfection. Okay, regular cleaning plays a vital role in limiting the transmission of COVID-19, as we know. Reducing the clutter and removing difficult to clean items can make cleaning easier. Increase the frequency of cleaning using standard cleaning products such as detergent and bleach, paying attention to all surfaces, but especially ones that are touched frequently. Door handles, light switches, work surface, remote controls, electronic devices. Other things to think about there, not necessarily ones you would always think about, but vending machines. Everybody touches the vending machine. Everybody touches the kettle. It's an important thing. See, coffee. Can't survive without the coffee. Okay, telephones. You got a telephone, what's to say your colleagues answered your phone for you? Right, whilst you've just been off out at the toilet. Just keep thinking about all of these surfaces that we touch frequently. Keep up the cleaning. Hand sanitizers, have antibacterial wipes available. If the products are all there, people are more likely to use them. If they've got to go searching for them, it's less likely that it's going to happen. Okay, it's not necessary to wear personal protective equipment. We don't need you all wandering around looking like something out the ET movie. Okay, you're just going to wash your hands. Remember, whichever way we look at this, coronavirus is killed with soap and water. We just need to keep our general cleaning and hygiene up to date. Some of our offices where we've got a high turnover of staff, we've got shift workers, as I've mentioned, logistics, we've worked 24/7 throughout the pandemic, and they're shift workers. So we've got lots of changeover and they overlap. So every day, many of the offices are going through something called fogging. Don't leave your papers lying around. I learnt my lesson the hard way. Come back in the next morning with curly edges on my paperwork. That's teach me to not tidy up my desk before I go home. All right, so there's lots of different ways that we can make our offices COVID secure. Other things to also think about, laundry. If you've got tea towels and things like that, then you might, excuse me, you might need to think about how we carry out some cleaning of those. Kitchens and communal canteens, as I've mentioned, crockery, cutlery, kettles, vending machines, hot water tanks, all of it all gets used by everybody. Any food businesses that are watching this webinar, you should continue to follow the Food Standard Agency's guidelines. Okay, your bathrooms, continue with the frequently touched surfaces. Ensure suitable hand washing facilities are available, including running water, soap and paper towels or hand dryers. Waste. Waste does not need to be segregated unless an individual in the setting shows symptoms of or test positive for COVID-19. If you have somebody within your workplace that tests positive for COVID-19, there are other guidelines that need to be followed. This webinar is purely covering the very basics of your physical health and well-being with returning to work and COVID-19 secure measures. If you have issues with people testing positive, there's lots of advice out there, or just drop us an email and we can help you with that. Dispose of your routine waste as normal, placing any unused cloths or wipes in black bags, waste bins. You'll know if you've been using the testing kits, there is no requirement to dispose of any part of that testing kit as clinical or infectious waste. It does all go in your normal waste bin, but just make sure it's all tucked away so nobody has to actually touch it, because it's not pleasant, is it? Okay. So this last one really just covers if somebody doesn't want to return to the workplace. There's lots of things to think about. I'm not going to read all of those out to you. Hopefully all of you have got lots of positive staff that are skipping and singing their way back to the workplace because they're fed up with Zoom and Teams and can't wait to get back. But there are a few circumstances where people are not going to be ready to come back to the workplace. And if that is the case, then you need to consider those options and work with them. Okay. Thank you, Sally. That kind of brings to the end of the PowerPoint presentation. I can see, I think we've had some questions. I will unshare my screen.
Brilliant.
We can come back to here.
Right, the first question is, yeah, good one here. How much will all this cost? COVID has already cost businesses hugely over the last 15 months. People are suffering. What are your thoughts?
Sorry, excuse me. Yeah, I'm being completely honest with you. All the advice is available free of charge on the HSE's website. There are templates for your risk assessments. You don't need to be spending a lot of money on an expensive health and safety consultant. Okay, there are lots of this is stuff you can do yourself. And where cleaning is concerned, as I said in that, soap and water kills coronavirus. Nobody's asking you to spend thousands on hand sanitizing stations or anything else. A pack of hand wipes for the desk, working with your colleagues and employees, and just making sure that you have done your risk assessments. As I said, all of it is all available on the HSE's website, and I totally and fully understand that businesses are struggling and do not need any extra expense. Hopefully that helps, but I'm always here as part of the chamber if you need advice. I've probably opened up a can of worms by saying that, but I am here and will do my best to support you as much as I can.
I was just thinking, when I made the big decision to move from the kitchen table up to the landing, I basically had a 6-foot trestle table in the garage, which I dug out of the garage and I covered it in an old sheet. The chair I blagged, which again, I'm very lucky because obviously running the chamber, I knew somebody who had lots of chairs. The screen, Lisa is on the call. Lisa, we ordered the new screen. How much did that cost? That wasn't hugely expensive, was it?
No, it wasn't hugely expensive. It was maybe something along the lines of £30,
Yes.
and it was a big screen.
Yeah.
It wasn't a small one. You made sure to get a good size.
Yeah. And we also,
the other thing to also bear in mind is there's as I mentioned, there's lots of businesses that have taken a lot of desks out of their offices. So there may be online, whether it be community pages, and it might be something that we can maybe put out on our website at some point. Sorry, Lisa, I'm passing more work your way, but we might be able to put out there that if people are looking for desks, we can try and speak to some of the bigger businesses that have reduced their office size and have got desks and chairs and things available secondhand.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan. I mean, my biggest expense was because when I did move upstairs, then my connectivity was not very good because I was away from the router. And that was a bit of a nightmare because for webinars, I was having to then move back downstairs. So basically we invested in cables So, and I was then thinking, oh my Lord, I'm going to have cables running all over my house. But my lovely husband managed to drill various holes through stairs and what have you. He spent about 2 days tracking this cable all around the house. But it is now, it is now perfect, because I think we are in this for the long haul.
Yeah,
And as I keep stressing, you have to remember this is your home as well. So
yeah.
you don't want it to look totally like an office.
The,
Um,
the other thing is, yeah, I totally agree, Chris, cables are
yeah,
better, but if people can't, you have to also bear in mind people are in rented properties, so they can't do
yes,
that.
this is
So
true.
the other thing is, and I only know this because I have a daughter that seems to eat mobile data. I've just swapped her onto this SIM only contract, and it's 150 megabytes or whatever it is, gigs a month, and it's £15 a month.
Mm.
So there are a lot of the mobile data deals out there. Yes, totally agree, cables are better, but we have to bear in mind people are in rented properties, and then they are not allowed as part of their rental contract to start putting extra cables in.
Mm. And also, a quick one I'm finding hard working from home is it's the heating. We used to, well, yes, our office is at West Thames College, which is great, a lovely old building. And so on a Monday, we'd get in, it would be freezing cold because the heating would be off over the weekend. But by Friday, yes, you'd be in t-shirts and the windows would be open. At home, it is, it's different. I'm sitting in a north-facing landing, and it is cold. I'm cold now. It's an interesting one. I mean, I know you do get this tax break, I think £26 a month to work from home, but I'm not sure that's going to cover my heating. So I don't know what to suggest about that one. Any ideas on that one?
Oh, I'd like to say, yeah, I've got the answer to that one, but I don't. I'm in the
Yeah.
same position.
Mm.
I say I'm in the same position. I am and I'm not. For us that are working, work for ourselves, we can offset some of our home expenses as part of our office. So if you are self-employed working from home, effectively one room out of the number of rooms that you've got can be offset. So if it was £100 a month, hopefully none of yours are £100 a month, but if it was £100 a month and you've got 5 rooms and one of those rooms is being used in the office, you can offset 20 quid of that
Right.
towards paying for your bills through the
Yeah.
business. But yeah, that's a difficult one, and I think it's something businesses will have to think about, and I think it's something delightful government are going to have to think about.
A lovely comment in the chat
Jumpers.
box. Yes, jumpers, which I do rather like. And then Yusuf is saying he had to buy air conditioning units for the opposite reason. My elderly parents keep the heating on even in the summer. Now my tip for the very hot summer, not this year, but last year when it was really warm, and when I was able to, I would go and decamp and work at a local air conditioned hotel. It worked really well. So I'd set off my laptop, I would live off iced coffee, and it was a bit like having a holiday. But you were doing your work in a different, and they were paying for the air conditioning. So is my tip.
Yeah,
Now another thing I've got a bit of. I mean, you touched on this, Mel. We've all worked harder during lockdown because we haven't got much else to do. So the easy thing was, oh, let's just go knock a few emails on the head, so I don't have it all winking at me tomorrow. I'm getting a bit twitchy because now the social life is beginning to take, begin to start again. And I'm just thinking, oh my Lord, I'm going to get absolutely knackered, even more tired than I was before because I'm doing the social things as well. And I've got used to this crazy level of work. So,
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I
thoughts.
think that's where routine and structure comes in. I think it's and this ties in with stress and mental health. And I think practice what I preach would be a good idea occasionally, but try not to pick your phone up first thing in the morning.
Mm,
Make sure you give yourself half an hour to have a cup of tea or coffee, read a book, eat your breakfast, go for a walk around the block. Start your day for you it is something that I think all the psychologists and everybody out there will say the same thing. If you start the day by picking up your phone and seeing what you've got coming on ahead of you, you're already there. You're in that rat race before your day has even started. So I think that's important, and it is so important to have the structure. And again, some of those things will wait till tomorrow. You're laughing because you know I'm as bad, and please don't laugh because you know what I'm going to say. But it's can I swear at my phone instead of answering it at 7 a.m? Chris Gilly, no, you can't. you can just do what I do and just open with one eye if it's really important. But no, there are days when it's like that. And as I said to you last night, Sally, yesterday was one of those for me. It started at 7:30 in the morning and it just kept going. Yeah. But I think what's important is being able to recognize those days and then saying, right, so tomorrow I'm not going to turn my phone on, or I'm not going to turn my computer on until the time. And it's very easy. I say this to lots of the employees at my customers, and I'm sure you can imagine cargo has been very, very heavily hit and it's been very full on, but your employer cannot make you do any more than you're contracted to do. As much as we've all got into this, you cannot get into trouble for not turning your computer on till 9 o'clock if your contracted hours are 9 o'clock. The fact you've been doing 8 o'clock because normally you would be out of the house and actually you're now not commuting and blah, 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 blah. We could all do that extra hour, but it's about the structure, it's about the routine and taking time out. It's so important.
What I've always found is, because you know that some weeks are so much busier than others, and I know that June is going to be ridiculously, stupidly busy. So when I do get the chance, if for example, somebody's coming to have coffee with my husband on Thursday, and I'm thinking, yes, I will make time to go and join them because I know that I have just worked such long hours. So you tend to sort of grab your breaks when you can and not and enjoy it and have a bit of a laugh and a giggle and then go back to it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that structure. It's that coming away from it, coming back and not just keep rolling with it. But I think it's important. I think we're all going to go through that. I really should be getting on with some work now. And it's because of this habit thing that we go through. The psychology of it is that you do the same thing every day for 3 weeks, you're addicted and it becomes a habit. And we've now done a year of doing that, and we've now got to undo that. But we've all got to be able to recognise it and work with each other. I can see that we've got another question in there about lone workers. How do you communicate if they are very shy and don't want to talk a lot? What questions do you ask? It's a really difficult one, Simona, really difficult one. I think you kind of have to try to reach out to them and give them the opportunity to come to you. I think if they're very shy, all you're going to do is stress them out by putting a lot on them and asking lots of questions. And that's going to be an issue. If you already know that they're very shy, you could maybe speak to their colleagues to just make sure that there's not been any change in their personality, or they've not become even more withdrawn than they may already seem as a very shy person. You can just ask them things like, ask them if there is anything else they need, rather than are you okay? It's do you need any extra resources? How is your internet speed going on? Go around it in a different way. Say to them, how's your chair getting on? We've all been sat on these for a year now. Keep it light-hearted. Don't go in for the kill. Because I think we're very shy people that are full on, right, okay, so how you doing? What you're doing? How's the workload? They can kind of tend to get a little bit, very shy people tend to be very timid and quite nervous in themselves. So it's just about asking different questions. But for lone workers, it's all about, do they have a point of contact if they need to speak to somebody? That's the only thing you really need to know, is that in an emergency, have they got somebody they can contact, or is there something that we need to look at putting on their computer or on their mobile phone as an emergency contact, so they have got somebody? Is there somebody that they are really comfortable with that could maybe be their buddy up or their emergency contact? So that's
I'm a great believer in Zoom as well. I mean, if you persuade them, at least Zoom, you can actually, or Teams, you can actually see the person, and I think you can then sort of read a bit more into their body language. And if worst comes to the worst, I mean, if they live locally, you know, you could maybe just go and knock on the door and stand on the doorstep, just to check that they're okay. I think that's the way forward. I mean, I find working with Lisa, we used to be an awful lot, obviously, together in the office, but we've learnt the joys of shared screen. And we have SharePoints. We can look at files together, so we can have a Zoom call. We can then work together on the files.
Okay, and Chris Gillies made a really good point. I think sometimes we're very shy people if there's more than just a one-to-one. So if you have a little bit of a Zoom party, maybe they can just kind of come on and just listen. They don't have to actually, they're not under pressure to talk. Maybe you could actually, for the lone worker side, you could set up a Zoom meeting to discuss concerns about lone working, and that person can maybe just listen in to the questions that other people are coming up with and the questions you're putting out to them. So if you're saying to them, like, if you're working on your own, how do we make sure we stay in touch with each other, and turn it into an open discussion forum with more than just the one-to-one.
No, excellent, thank you. Any other questions? I think they've all been answered. Yeah, my thing is, I've worked from home now. Well, I used to work from home, and I did it for 8 years because it worked around the children. So I was the one that anybody suggested a meeting, I would say, "Oh yes, please, I'm there." So working from home for me is fine. I worry a little about the youngsters missing the peer experience in an office, because you do learn an awful lot by osmosis just by listening to what's going on around you.
Yeah, I totally agree, Sally. I've been doing some endpoint assessments for our apprentices on the freight forwarding side. And we are seeing such a difference in the apprentices that have stayed working in the office and those that have either worked from home or been furloughed. And it's huge divides. As soon as you start talking to them, they spend 4 hours at the moment on Zoom with us doing different projects, and then we have a full 65-minute discussion. And those that have been in the office and been chatting with their colleagues and have learned so much from their colleagues, because they're still learning, their apprentices, they're young, because it can fill 65 minutes easily. Whereas those that have been stuck at home and have kind of learned through the tuition side of things are struggling a lot more. So yeah, completely agree with you, Sally. We've got a lot of work to do with our youngsters.
And one last point is, my lovely daughter who works in the centre of London, obviously has been working from home in a very small flat with a very strange little desk. But her team leader suggested when they did come into the office, they could use Boris bikes. That went down, well, with my daughter, like a lead balloon. She just said, no way was she cycling on a Boris bike across London. So you have to think of your employer. It might have worked for the team leader, but not for my darling Emma. She wasn't going to do that.
No, Sophie would have just looked at me as if I had 2 heads if I said to her she's got to get on the bike.
Especially on a Boris bike in London. I mean, it's lethal. So but I'm looking at the time. We're almost 4 o'clock. I would just like to thank Mel for your time. A really interesting hour. As somebody said, this could be a very dry subject, but I think we've made it quite, hopefully interesting and fun. And I always find it interesting to hear what you have to say about things. So thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure.
Sorry, I better find a bit of paper to say that the rest in the series, we've got health and mental well-being. We've then got leadership. And the hybrid working model, home and office. So do look out for those titles. There are an awful lot of webinars at the moment, but they're all being recorded, so you can always catch up with them later if you can't actually attend. And I just want to say thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.